Good morning. This is Wilkey, an educator with Startup Trader, coming at you. It is 8:25 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, April 15, 2020. So I want to start off today a little bit different. We're going to do a public service announcement. I want to point out that the VX, the futures contract for the VIX, rolled over on toss. The front month is now May from April. So if you look at the chart on the continuous, just type it in the VX /VX, you're going to notice there was a gap down, right? So to avoid looking at the gap, right, you can either look at April, the K20, or you can look at May, the J20. So if we go back a little bit more and look at the H20, right? So the H20, which was the March contract, just went up, right? So by the time we rolled over from March to April, right, no institutions were going to pay for that much of insurance, right? They weren't going to, it cost too much. So they were ending, getting out of these contracts if they had them. So then we went into, April, and you can see that once it rolled over, right, this whole contract has been to the downside. Now, I'm not saying that May is going to be to the upside, but one thing that you have to, watch and think about, and look at the price for the April, by the way. It's at 41.50 on my chart right now. When I flip this over, it's going to be at 35.25. So this is cheaper, right? So as we, zoom in just to the action, since the front month has changed, like on Thinkorswim, you can see it's been bid up so far. That, in my opinion, is why the futures are dropping a little bit overnight. We'll get into that more of a minute, but I want to start off with that public service announcement. I think that was the most important footnote of the day, just to watch. Sometimes people don't see the technicals that go on in the market and miss, the most obvious things. So there you go for that. So looking at the trade sheet, and I'm sorry, we're going to come back to this trade sheet. Looking back at yesterday's action, right, we saw that the overnight low was right on value area high, right, went up after that, and then, sorry, having some mouse difficulties over here. And you can see that the NASDAQ again, so I took this picture with them all going to, S4A, or I'm sorry, R4A, resistance level 4A, just to show you the relative strength in the NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ opened up slightly above R2 and basically tagged R4A yesterday. And you can see the performance. This red dash line here is the previous day's high. The red dotted line is the overnight high. And the solid blue line is the bell open from yesterday. So you can see that the Russell come down, pretty much tagged value area high, and then went back up. But it really didn't get out of yesterday's range. It didn't even really have, most of the action was below the bell open, and it really had no traction above the overnight high, right? It didn't get back into yesterday's value or nothing like that. But relatively speaking, look at the rest of the action for, here's a bell open, the solid blue line again for the NASDAQ. There's the overnight high, the red dotted line. You can see the relative strength in that. This blue dash line is a European close, so this is where we're at 2 hours into the trading day. That's 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So as you go back up through there, you can see the relative strength. You can see that the ES, right, opened and closed. It opened and the European close was right around the same level there, right around R2 yesterday. So again, this is just to point out the relative strength in the NASDAQ, and you can see how much farther these other charts or these other indices would have had to go to hit the same levels on the charts that it did yesterday. So keep that in mind with that. So looking at our initial bond sequence, you can see the Russell hit the initial bonds low, which I call the green line. This is the low target. So nothing really doing after it hit that low target, and the rest of them, So we can see, I'll probably add this to the other two indexes that I track this way, but you can see this the purplish line here is the VIX and where it is in the range for the day after the bell open. You can see it's hugging the bottom of the chart, right? So people aren't really wanting to buy insurance, they're not paying too much for insurance, and the market's trending up. So again, we had that VIX rollover to the front month this morning on some of the platforms. So we'll see what that does. But so far, it's been bid up. Uh, we'll skip this. We'll skip that. So we'll get into these longer term charts in just a second. But what I want to show you is looking at the Dow, the 30 stocks in the Dow. Since there's only 30 on that index, we can actually zoom into it a little bit more and look at it. But the Dow was up, basically 81.5 points yesterday. But you can see this section over here is from close to close. This section over here that's colored is from open to close. Green, it's above it. Red, it's below it. So you can see that, right now everything is in an uptrend on the strength meter, and this is a strength meter by toss. I put, no weight in it other than just looking at it for, giggles, I guess. But you can see Walgreens Boots Allowance is the only one that's range bound right now. These will change, and they have been changing back and forth. But the whole time that we're in that bullish uptrend for all those years, most of these always said range bound, right? They never had any strength to them as far as this indicator is concerned. Looking at the profile from yesterday, I'll zoom into this a little bit more so you can see. But you can see how the gray is the bell to bell, the blue is the overnight session. You can see the choppiness of it. You can see almost a split in the distribution. We'll just call it 86.15 right there. I'm going to actually make a note of that. Is a distribution. And then you can see, well, watch value from that. And then you can also see what the ES, it had almost, distribution here, distribution there, distribution here. I'm not going to split it up that much. We'll just be able to watch the charts for that. So going back to the reads, if you have this, you can just glance on it, pause the video, whatever, read some of it. We've got going to have, this is still from yesterday, for the import prices, but we're going to have retail sales that should have just crossed right now at 8:30. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have the Bank of Canada rate announcement, and then at 11:15, we're going to have their press conference. That's something to watch. Tomorrow is going to be our unemployment, right? So we'll watch that. Along with building permits and the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index and housing starts. So tomorrow at 8:30, there's going to be a lot of news released. So one thing I want to do is point out that, again, before the bell this morning, we got Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, PNC, Schwab, United Healthcare, and U.S. Bank. So a lot of stuff that's going to affect mainly the Dow and the ES. Other markets may move in sympathy with this, but it could be all about the VIX rollover today. The other thing of note that I really want to go over on here, we can look at the range analysis here. We had range contraction yesterday a little bit too, right? 50 points basically bell to bell. Session was 93. That is under our median. Overnight was 60.50, and we've got 60.83. The first hour was 40. The median is 41.83. That's about in line. But one thing I want to look at down in here was if we look at the year-to-date cash, you can see now the NASDAQ, the NQ over here, got within basically a 0.5% of being flat on the year yesterday. So, and then graphically, if we scroll down here to that, you can see this, red lines almost flat for the year, and that really stood out to me yesterday when I was reviewing this. It'd be a nice place for things to start rolling back over again. So with all that said, let's look at today's action. We got 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 points in the ES in the overnight session. 77.5 the overnight high was pretty much the bell to bell high from yesterday, and we're rotating down. So we've what we call an in and around. If you watch, used to watch cartoons when you were kids, if you're old enough to have had cartoons on TV when you were a kid, basically this is we closed above value area high. We've rotated around value area low, and yesterday's bell to bell low now for the ES. And so this is a game of keep away now, this potential for the day. Looking at all the indexes, and I threw it down to level S4B for you just to see what the potential on the day could be if things get out of hand. Notice again how much stronger the NASDAQ looks, right? It's down, but it's down the least, right? It's barely moving down to get down to basically S4B. It would have to drop 500 points from where it is right now, basically. The ES only has to go, basically another 50, 60 points down from where it is right now to get down to this level. It's on the table for sure. We're already down 72 points. So keep that in mind. Looking at the sequences overnight, again, this left side is from yesterday's action. The right side is from the session starting last night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So as we kind of go through here, you can see this is a bull check on the top side of the screen. This is a bear check down here. You can see that as the sequences are progressing, we're holding the 61.8 down, and basically we're in extensions now in the overnight session on the ES from about 28.19 quarter. You can zoom in and get the level yourself on your charts. Too low, and that's where we are right now. And you could actually even, if you want to get more aggressive, there's a sequence that's from basically 27.99 too low that you could watch to see if that holds first. Looking at the NASDAQ now, very similar picture, right? Holding the 61.8 all the way down and now holding the 38.2. Just hit profit targets down here at 85.18 basically. Looking at the Russell, same thing, right? Holding these sequences down, and the Russell again would be in one of those extension sequences, basically from 12.19.40 too low, and you this is just from the session. These are micro draws I'm pointing out here, not the end all be all draws, but this is where the session opened up last night. This is what I like to look at as a first read when I wake up in the morning. So also we were talking about the 27.77 yesterday that we had popped above it. I really wasn't buying that that would be the check back, but for yesterday's session it was. But complete roll back over. So we'll watch right around this 27.32 area. That's where things get a little bit more dicey, and you can see the split in the node, and right around where we also checked back yesterday as a micro level, right around 27.50 would be something to keep an eye on for the ES. So moving on to the NASDAQ, if I can type. So we've got a long way to go to get back to these check back points. I'm going to throw another level up here. I don't like to throw these smaller levels on here, but really right where that overnight action took place. And we're going to call that 84.90. And we'll see what happens. And you can also see that there was support at the bottom of this node. So we're going to draw a little bit of one right around there. We're going to call this basically, I'm going to move this up to 84.20. So there are your little compulsions going back and forth. And I'm not going to throw another one, but you could also throw a mini level, and I should dot these out. I'll dot these out. I don't want to take up the time right now. These are just day trading levels, right? They're not that important to me. They're not as important as these other levels I have marked over here. So these are just going to be like gray dotted lines for today's session. So looking at the Russell. So you can see the Russell never got up, and we talked about this being the weaker link, and we talked about 1250 being the area that it will get rejected from. You got 1250.30. It did spike above there yesterday, right? It was short-lived, and that really started the the down movement for it. So 1167.30 is going to be the next level that I'm watching, and then we could actually add some levels right around. I'm going to actually put a midline on this between these two distributions. So it's going to be 1109.40. Looking at the Dow, same thing. I'm not going to add anything here. You got 23,075 below and back up above 23,560 would be a little bit more bullish here. So to put a wrap on this, keep in mind the VIX roll. Watch that VIX, the prices, and you do yourself a favor if you're looking at April. Put in the J20 or the K20. If you're looking at May, put it in the K20 on your charts. I hope this helps. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk